Hey everybody, my name is Wyatt and I'm Ferda Tunes, and today we are ranking ScHoolboy Q's discography so far. All of his mixtapes, all of his albums, worst to best style. Now this is my first one of these kinds of videos, but I have a ton of artists that I want to do this for and make it kind of a series that I focus on throughout this year. But if you have a request, please feel free to let me know whose discography you would like me to rank. Now, I don't think ScHoolboy Q really needs much of an intro. He's one of the most prolific and sought-after rappers of the last decade, Top Dog Entertainment, just a really fantastic character in rap and really proved himself over the last decade. He hasn't finished or retired or anything, but I just wanted to do his discography up until this point since he's taken quite a while yet again to release a new album, so there's not too much else to say. Let's get right into it. Q's debut mixtape is real dope if you're a hardcore fan looking to see where he got his start and just hear his early stuff, but not too much else outside of that. It's far from a bad tape, it's just not really interesting, especially at this point in time. The production feels roughly mixed, but most of the beats on here are surprisingly pretty great, and Q has always been a good rapper, and it shows here. There's just not too much else I really have to say about it. It's just a dope little tape. Essential tracks I'd say are Dope Shit, Schoolboy, and Let Nobody Take. Q's just pure technical skill and rapping ability really steals the show on this Gangsta and Soul mixtape. He just sounds a lot more tight and smooth and overall just a lot more comfortable on the beat. He hadn't really started to flaunt his personality much in his music until around his second album, but there's definitely some gems here. Especially the first half is pretty surprising how great it is. And all of the songs, even on the first mixtape, with Black Hippie members, Kendrick, J-Rock, Absol, are always great. They were always killer on tracks together. I definitely wouldn't miss some of those tracks if you're a hardcore fan, and it was really interesting for me to kind of dive back and hear the really early stuff from Q, because I had never heard these mixtapes prior to making this video. But yeah, it was kind of what I expected. Really dope shit, but nothing really to lose my mind over. Q's debut album is a really solid project, especially for the time it came out. I didn't think it would make it this low on the rank, but unfortunately, just revisiting this album upon making this video, I just kind of realized I don't think it's aged that well. The highlights in the track list are still fantastic, and some damn near classic songs in here for me, which we'll get to, but it kills me to put it this low because Situations is by far one of my favorite ScHoolboy Q songs. The beat is really cinematic and kind of feels like mafia flavored, but it's all just so goddamn groovy. The chorus is just a great example of what I see as like a damn near perfect rap hook on a track, and yeah, I just think it's one of his best songs. Don't miss that one. But yeah, I just think Q has come a long way since this album and his early stuff. I just think the track list just has a few too many duds or songs or moments that have just kind of grown stale over the years. Combine that with it being over an hour long, and yeah, I think it's ScHoolboy's worst album. If you cut it down, cut some tracks out and everything, cut it down to a solid 45 minutes, it almost definitely would have made the top 4. But I do have to mention that Q was always good at the very atmospheric, chilled out, more stoner rap tracks like Bet I Got Some Weed and Druggies with Hoes. That track is a classic to me. Like, just so memorable, bombastic, chemistry, everything is on that track. And yeah, just hate to sound like I'm writing this off completely, because there are some tracks that I still come back to quite a bit, like Situations and Bet I Got Some Weed.
What's the word?
This album will always have a special place in my heart, though, for just those high school memories, man. Can't let go of that. ScHoolboy Q's most recent album, and unfortunately his most underwhelming. To me, this album feels like Q just kind of taking a creative step back and focusing more on just having fun and just making some bangers. And that's all totally fine and sounds great, but it's just hard to deny the unfortunate drop in quality pretty much across the board on this album. Nothing on here really reaches the highs that his last 2 albums had, and as much as I still enjoy it, it definitely holds some of his worst songs on here. Do I even need to mention Water or Chopsticks? Chopsticks! I will give this album more credit than most, though. I do think it became over-hated because of its kind of underwhelming reception, but I think, especially if you're a ScHoolboy Q fan and you just love that gritty sound, I don't think it's a disappointing album. The deep cuts on here have some of Q's most raw and even personal songs to date, and I really think it's essential when talking about him now to mention those songs. Like Crash and Attention, easily two of Q's best songs to me, and Num Num Juice was seriously the hardest song to drop that year. Just a disrespectful, rude banger. So all I'll say is don't write Crash Talk off completely just because it was underwhelming. I do think there's a pretty solid bulk of material here that holds up surprisingly well. It's probably better than you remember it. Give it another try. I know I enjoyed it a lot more this year than I did back when it first came out. Habits and Contradictions almost feels like Setbacks 2.0. Q just leveled up everything that made him so appealing as an artist and really just started to fit into the true potential he had as a rapper. This is also where he started using his really signature delivery that we know him for now, and that just gave his verses just so much more sauce. Like on There He Go, it's a perfect example of this. Q almost ends up sounding cartoony on some of the flows in here, and it all just comes together, sounding so good and bumping so hard. Some of Q's most ambitious songs to date show up on here, like the intro, Sacrilegious. He really just started the album off with that darkness, just talking about survival in his situation, his faith in religion, drug use. Depression too, heavily, and with a hard-hitting yet hypnotic beat and a pretty uplifting chorus. It really sucks you in and makes you almost tense for a moment before just catapulting you into just that confident banger territory. Hands on the Wheel was just such an iconic pop rap hit at the time, you can't not mention it. A$AP Rocky and Q were always gold on a track together. And speaking of collabs, how can I not mention him and Absol linking up again for Druggies with Hoes Again, just turning the song into an absolute trunk knocker. Another highlight for me on here is My Hatin' Joint. Might be one of Q's smoothest songs, and he's just so funny on it. It's such a great listen. And Nightmare on Fig Street just sounds like a better, or at least darker version of the intro off of Setbacks, Fig Get the Money. It shows a real good glimpse into the sound that he'd really perfect on his next album, with just more harrowing, in-your-face, evil-sounding, and immaculately produced bangers. Also, I just noticed in making this video that there's 3 songs on the album that didn't make the streaming services version of the album, and I just need to make sure you guys aren't missing the song Blessed featuring Kendrick Lamar. Honestly, one of Q's just most heartfelt songs. A gorgeous track. And Raymond, 1969. Definitely one of the hardest songs on the album. Blank Face is definitely Q's most ambitious album, period. He really stepped out of his comfort zone with this one. Still feeding us absolutely top-notch bangers and that classic gritty feel from Q with songs like Ride Out, Straight Ballin', and Dope Dealer. But some songs on here just feel like a full-on level up and stand out as some of his most essential songs in his discography. I'm talking John Muir and Groovy Tony. These are 2 of his most essential songs to me, and also 2 of his most artistic. Still at the core feeling like gritty gangster rap bangers, but just painting such a vivid picture and having such a strong mood or vibe to them. My main and really only problem with this album is that it's just too bloated, and I think as a front to back full album experience, it just drags out quite a lot. There's 17 songs here, and there's a good handful that could have been cut, and unfortunately those ones seem to be the longest songs in the tracklist. So a song like Know Ya Wrong ends up feeling like a chore to get through, especially when you're listening to the whole album. It's like almost 6 minutes, and it feels longer than it does. I do enjoy that song quite a bit, and I don't want to just completely hate on it. I do, admire Q for going into that more kind of weirder delivery and bit of a jazzy instrumental. And as decent as it is as a whole, there's just a lot of things in the song that just borderline irritate me. And Whatever You Want, this was always a weird track to me because, again, I admire Q for trying out something new. This is almost a full-blown electropop song. But I just feel like Q really falls into the background of it, and his verses don't do much to help him bring out of that. Still though, I have to give this album very high praise for just being so ambitious. Q really took some risks with his sound on a lot of songs here, and I'd say the majority of them end up sounding surprisingly smooth. Some of the songs on here are just so meticulously detailed, like John Muir and things like that. By Any Means is always going to be one of my favorite stoner rap, kind of hazy, atmospheric tracks. I wouldn't even call that a stoner rap track, actually. It's an uplifting song. I fucking adore that track. And the outro, Tukey Knows Too, is definitely one of his hard as nails songs. So I'd still call this album overall pretty great. I just wish the vision came together just tighter and more cohesive.
Then again, you like
Q may have shot for ambitious and creative highs with Blankface, but Oxymoron remains Q, just at his core, his most powerful. Definitely Q's absolute best and tightest album to me. It's just sounding so confident, hungry, and comfortable over his beats, all at the same time. And he really pulled out all the stops musically from song to song. It'd be hard to say there's a consistent sound on any of Q's albums. All of the track lists seem to be somewhat all over the place, usually in a good way. But Oxymoron definitely has a consistent vibe, at least, that is just so addicting to me. And I really feel like most of the songs on here really come together and fit nicely next to each other, as different as they may be. And it really comes together as an extremely tight, just under an hour track list. Starting off with the explosive and in-your-face intro, Gangsta. Q brings so much energy to this song. His flow is almost spastic and manic. It's kind of all over the place, but it's so impressive, especially at the time of release. He really doesn't even give you a moment to breathe from verse to hook to verse. It's a really intense track, and it's easy to very quickly see Q has just stepped up his delivery yet again. But this track is just another level of mean, in-your-face grittiness from Q. And he really doesn't slow it down too much at all with the second track, Los Awesome. Just a chaotic, almost messy beat. I say that in the best way possible. This track will always just enamor me for being so loud and evil. Looking like the Reaper in your driveway. Just a hard as bricks intro. And the third track, Collard Greens, is really where he starts to slide into the more atmospheric and kind of sneak in some more radio-friendly hits. But Q doesn't sacrifice his sound much at all when doing this. Q obviously isn't as mean and in your face as he is on the more hard-hitting tracks, but he really still holds his own and really still manages to flaunt his personality and just his overall aesthetic in his delivery and voice enough to still feel like a core Oxymoron experience type of track, if that makes sense. I have to just talk about Collard Greens and Man of the Year more for a minute, because I'm seriously ready to say these are timeless bangers to me. It's infectious music, really, and Collard Greens especially, that beat is just so unique, and it really feels like a staple in like hip-hop party bangers of the last decade. Like I said, the track list is an extremely tight, just under an hour, perfect experience for me. But most copies will come with deluxe tracks, and honestly, they're pretty great. Some of these songs are just dope extras, but some of them really fit the core album experience, and like I said, that vibe. Especially Fuck LA. That song is hard as dick. Pause. This album has a pretty wide range of producers, and I really think each of them just pulled out all the stops and gave Q the most perfect beat for him and just for this album to really come together as the masterpiece I think it is. If I had to compare it to other rap albums of that decade just to show my true praise, because I really do think this is a pretty underrated album, especially nowadays, to me it's like the gangster rap version of Rodeo by Travis Scott. And the production to me has always felt like a darker version of Good Kid, Mad City, but same level of quality almost. This album is a classic in my eyes. I've been saying that for like the last 3 years, honestly, but now I feel like it more than ever. It was definitely one of the most unforgettable hip-hop albums to me of the last decade, but I think it was undeniably one of the hardest gangster rap, albums of last decade. Revisiting this one and just really going back to 2014 and just having a full-on front to back listening experience, I was blown away by how much fun I had. I don't know if this is an unpopular pick for best ScHoolboy Q album, but It's very easily his best to me. I just really don't think this album will ever really stop bumping. It still sounds so surprisingly fresh to me. I'm sorry, I'll stop now, but I had to give this album so much praise because I really do think it is a classic. And I think it gets underrated nowadays, and people don't talk about it too much. Maybe because ScHoolboy Q and, Crash Talk, the kind of underwhelmingness around that, and just leaving it to a point where we don't know what he's going to do next or when. But I just wanted to make this video because I'm a fan, and God, I love oxymorons so fucking much. So please let me know. Do you agree with my list? Do you disagree? Leave your ranking, leave your reasoning, whatever you want. Let me know if you liked, obviously. Follow me, Instagram, Twitter, all that is in the description. I hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you did. And I got a bunch more of these coming. Please let me know whose discography you would like to see me go through, and I will try to get to it. Much love and peace to the Ferda fam. I swear I'm gonna be 80 years old just bumping that fuck.